Hey everybody, Tom Vasel here, and we are on shelf 3 of the Dice Tower library at the very bottom. 3E, it's the bottom. Now I don't put games in the bottom because they're worse or because they're better. I put them on the bottom because that was the next shelf I'm filling. This is a very varied shelf. It has some extremely popular games and also games you've never heard of. The first one is kind of a very quirky game, which is a bad way to describe it since it's called Quirky Circuits. But it is essentially a mix between programming, like Robo Rally, and also this does feature robots, and it's cooperative, but there's also no communication. You're essentially putting everything together. So think of the mind mixed with Robo Rally and cooperative. That combination really didn't do anything for me, but a lot of other people really enjoyed it, although I haven't heard much about it in the past year or so, but that's probably because people haven't been getting together playing games. Now, the next two games I have not played. The first one is Castello Methoni. The main reason I haven't played that is because the designer is Leo Calavini, and my ratio of liking his games is at 4%, I believe. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad game. It just means it's for other people. It has some nice building pieces in it. I believe Z reviewed it. Someone on the Dice Tower reviewed it. It wasn't I, but they said it was good enough to go in the Dice Tower library, so there we go. We then have Captains of the Gulf. This one I haven't played because it just never got around to it. Spielworks, so I know it's kind of a Euro-style game. The heavy Euro gamers in my game group were playing it for a while, so I know that they enjoyed it. It has a cool-looking board once there's stuff on it. Before you put anything on it, the board's actually pretty boring-looking, but it's still one that I might play someday. Then we have Carnival of Monsters. This is a Richard Garfield drafting game that almost was in the Dice Tower Essentials. There's a few problems. I'm not a huge fan of the art. The art is kind of old style. And I also think that the deck should have been split into an A and B deck with better stuff on the bottom. But there's still a lot of good things about it. I still really enjoy the game. I like drafting it. You're drafting resources that you will then use to catch monsters. You're catching monsters to go show them off in a zoo. So, I don't know. I kind of like the theme. Now, this is definitely a shelf of games I have not played. CO2 is a game I've watched being played, but it's a Lacerda game, and it doesn't have... I think it's a Lacerda. No, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm not really a fan of these big, heavier games, and this one has a semi-co-op thing in it. I'm sure it's a fine game. I'm sure lots of people like it, which is why it's in the Dice Tower library. Then we have Narcos, the board game. I never watched the show Narcos, so I can't speak to that. But I don't know. The whole idea of running drugs and stuff does not necessarily appeal to me. But it's a CMON game, and it seemed to get some good buzz. So again, it's in the library. I'm starting to feel like I don't know what I'm talking about on this shelf. But have no fear, I'll get there. Now we're at Peak Oil, which is something to do with the peak of an oil spout. That's probably not true at all. I don't know. I have not played this one, but it's also another Euro-style game that I know people like. Peak Oil is actually one that I plan to play at some point. And again, it's in the library because I've heard good things about it. King's Forge. Now, King's Forge is dice and building things. It is another game that I think is fine. But I don't know how long this one will be in the library. We'll see. I'm going to watch this one to see how often it gets checked out. The idea of it's fun. I like the idea of building weapons and selling them and using dice. I think that's a fun combination. But, all right. We need to move in the area that feels more familiar and happy to me. Let's start with Wayward. Now, Wayward's based on a comic, which I'd never heard of before I played the game, but I went and read it. I guess if you want me to read a graphic novel, make a game around it. That's almost guaranteed. I really enjoyed the comic, actually, and I enjoyed this game. Although, if you don't know the theme of the game, it's going to be a little confusing. It's a cooperative game. It's mostly in the library. The cooperative game is fine. It's a straight-up decent cooperative game. I think if you like this theme, you'll love the game. If you don't like the theme, you still might want to play it, especially for the pretty artwork. Shadowrift. A heroic adventure game. I don't believe I played this version. I believe I played an earlier, much smaller version of Shadowrift. But I know a lot of people like this game, so again, this is another one that's in the library for that reason. Okay. I can really talk about the next 4 games, so we're good, folks. Then we have Tokaido. Zen in a Box. Tokaido is about moving as far along a path as you possibly can. and then as far as you want to, not as you can, and you stop and get whatever you want on the space. You're trying to collect panoramas of different views. I have some cool money bits for this game. In fact, I had 3 different sets. I had to pick one to put in the game. That doesn't happen often with games. Tokaido is definitely blinged out. It is a beautiful game regardless. We then have Valley of the Kings, which originally was in the Dice Tower library as a small little deck builder. But they made 3 different versions of this game, Valley of the Kings. There was 3 different versions. They combined all 3 together, since you can combine them, in this box here, the premium edition from AEG, because everything's big box these days. But in this case, it works well. This is a deck building game, but you're also trying to get the cards out of your deck, because once they're out of your deck, you score them. So you have to decide how long you're going to keep them in your deck, because they're very useful, but you have to decide the usefulness compared to the points at the end of the game. Really cool concept. It's one of my favorite deck builders. Then Kingsburg. Now, I said I like the older version of Kingsburg better. However, this one has the expansion in, and it has everything. It's just that it's a good version. It's as good as the original, but Kingsburg, one of the best dice worker placement games that exists. I think it's fantastic. I love it. Definitely staying in the library for good. And then Manila. Manila here, a game many people haven't heard of. This is one of the games that if you're at a Dice Tower event, I might grab you and make you play this, because it's so fun and you probably haven't heard of it. Think of playing like some sort of gambling game. That's what it is. You have these 3 boats racing down the river, and you are betting on which boat will finish, which boats will fail, and manipulating the dice to move them down. It's a really simple game with some nice components. It just comes together really well. And in fact, I was about to say it's my favorite game on this shelf, which is not really hard since I haven't played a lot of these. But I think Kingsburg is going to win that one. Although Valley of the Kings is good too. Those 3 games are amazing. That being said, I think a lot of people will like many of the games on this shelf, and that's why they're in the library. My liking of a game does not change whether it's in the library or not. I simply just put in games I think people will enjoy playing. Anyway, that's the end of Shelf 3E. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been going through the Dice Tower Library.